Thought I'd have a little play around today, and I've got some Indian ink. You can use acrylic ink for this as well. It works pretty much exactly the same. Now I use these tools to apply the ink. I've got a soft synthetic brush, and then this is just a little matchstick that I put into the ferrule of an old brush. This is just a wooden dip pen made of bamboo. Now I might use all of those, I might not. We'll see how it goes. Also, paper towel and a spray bottle is useful for this as well. So let's bring in some water over the whole sheet with the mist bottle. Now I've been looking at a book recently, History of American Tonalism. It's a great book, hundreds and hundreds of pages of fantastic paintings, and I thought I'd try and paint something somewhere in that style. Very kind of misty, ethereal look. Use a very limited palette. But I'll lay down all the dark areas first with some ink. And I'll start off with the small synthetic brush. And so pick up some ink and then blot it on a piece of paper towel. And as I drag in to the water on the paper, you can see it instantly starts splitting and spreading. And now I can work with the shapes as they emerge. So it's a very experimental way of working. You kind of have to see what happens and then go with it, really. So I'm not fully in control, but that's half of the fun, really, is to see what emerges. So laying some ink in, a little spray with a mist bottle, a little bit more ink. And it starts out very dark on the brush, but it's very heavily pigmented. So as you work into the water, it gets progressively lighter, and I can use that difference in tone to create the shape of a group of trees. So really very lightly laying the ink on and allowing it to mix with the water on the paper. And so let's try and build up a shape of a little group of trees. And I can actually move the ink around on the paper. It's not the same as using paint. The ink stays really quite fluid whilst it's wet. And I can manipulate it and move it around. So another little spray with the mist bottle. Try and encourage it to move around quite a bit. I want to build up really quite a misty feel to a group of trees here. So joining all these shapes together. I think I can lay some cloud shapes into the sky as well. So same thing, just using the ink really that's sitting on the paper for a lot of it and dragging it around so I get lighter areas and darker areas. So moving that ink around, really very light touch. Mixing it in with all the water that's just sitting on the paper. It's quite a nice way to work with ink. So if I get all these darks and all these shapes down in this first stage, the painting part is really quite simple. I can lay a wash over the whole lot. So let's build up a little bit of a tree line. Now I think I'll try and paint a bit of a river or a lake so I can put the distant tree line in. Maybe suggest some reflections as I go as well. I can get away with being fairly dark in the distance there. I'll be able to lay some paint around and over the top of this once it's dry as well. The ink dries perfectly waterproof, so you can bring a wash in over the whole thing. So treating this distance as one big shape, all joined together, and it's running down into the water as well, so it's kind of painting its own reflection in a way. And so making sure all these shapes are joined together. And really very simply building up a shape of a riverbank coming down at a little bit of an angle. Let's tease out some reflections as I go. I don't have to be too literal about any of the shapes that I'm painting. I can keep it all very vague. I think I want to try and create a sense of maybe a sunset or a sunrise, so it's going to be really quite moody once I bring in the watercolour wash over the top, and so I have to bear that in mind as I'm laying these shapes down. So picking up some ink, then blotting it on the paper towel to remove any excess from the brush. It's quite a good idea not to have your brush loaded too much with ink. It will go on really too dark. I like to keep the bare minimum in the brush at any one time really, and then it allows me to work with it and move it around on the paper. So let's start to strengthen some of the shapes of these trees. I've got the lighter elements in, so now I can build up some of the shadows. Let's pick up a larger soft brush so I can move that around a little bit quicker. Now that's gone on very, very dark, so I can give that a little spray with the mist bottle. Now that little bit of water in there enables me to then work with that, move that around. And so this is, in a way, more similar to acrylic painting or oil painting for this stage, as opposed to watercolour. So getting all my dark shapes in first. Let's switch back to the smaller synthetic brush. I can get some darker shapes in for the tree trunks. Now thinking about the spacing, making it up as I go along. Try and make these shapes all different as I go. I don't want to try and create mirror image of anything. It's surprising how easy it is when you're laying in tree trunks to put them all the same distance apart and all the same shape, and then you look at it after and you're not sure how you managed to do that. It's always a good idea to make everything slightly different. So asymmetry where possible. So connecting all these shapes now with some dark across the land, joining everything together. So I'm laying in a lot of the shadows and the dark shapes of these trees all within this first ink wash. Now again, that's gone on quite dark, so There's still a fair amount of water on the paper though, so I can drag that around into it. So manipulating that ink, joining all the shapes together, building up little areas of texture. Another little spray with a mist bottle as well. And that keeps the ink workable for quite a long amount of time really. You can, as long as you don't allow it to dry out, you can always work back into it and move it around. And I really like the way it forms a lot of soft and hard edges, a nice mixture of edges without having to do too much really. You can allow it to do its thing on the paper, and so don't try and be too in control of it. Allow the ink to move around. Don't worry if it looks like it's starting to move around a little bit too much. Allow it to go and do its kind of thing, and then it'll almost paint itself. So let's tease these edges down, make sure I don't have too hard an edge anywhere. Let's get a little bit of structure up in the sky as well. Some slightly darker areas for these cloud shapes. Another little spray with the bottle as well, soften all the edges. And now again, working with that ink, moving it around, connecting all these shapes together as well. I can also pick up ink that's sitting on the paper and move that around. I can drag that from one area to another. Again, while it's all still wet, it's very workable. I can move some of this ink around as well that's sitting down here in the foreground. Switch to the slightly larger brush and can drag that around all the way across. So I've built up areas of shadow. This is eventually going to be fairly dark, I think, down in the foreground, so I can get away with dragging the ink pretty much across the whole area down here. Let's just adjust the bank of that river slightly. Let's just soften a couple of edges, just using my finger. And I think I'll dry this and then we'll move on to the painting stage. Okay, it's completely dry, and that's really important that it's fully dry before you move on to the painting stage. If there's any areas that aren't dry, they'll reactivate when you spray it. And I like to bring in some more water again over the whole sheet, and so if that ink wasn't dry, that would start running and it'd also get into your brushes, and you don't want that. So do make sure it's perfectly dry. And once it's fully dry, it's perfectly waterproof. So I can now bring in a wash over the whole painting. And I've got some raw sienna and a little bit of cadmium yellow. And just try and create a nice evening sort of glow. So a fairly bright yellow sky. Can touch a little bit of light red into it as well. Let's try and create a feeling of a sunset or a sunrise. So it's either very early in the morning or quite late in the evening. And I can bring it all the way across the trees, all the way across where I've laid in the shapes for the clouds in the sky. And because that ink's waterproof, I can go straight over the top of it. It doesn't disturb it at all. Let's lay some of the palette greys into that mixture as well for some nice variation. Let's get some more raw sienna. A little bit more cadmium yellow. Quite a lot of water in the paint and in the brush. I'm using a very soft squirrel hair brush. Can bring it all the way down across that distance, across the water. Let's get that hair off the paper there. Yeah, bring it all the way down. Let's get some more red now as I come down into the land. A little bit more raw sienna. I can make this riverbank a tiny little bit redder. Drag some of that into the water as well, but leaving the lightest area behind those trees. So even adding this very simple wash brings the painting together. I'll try and get a tiny bit more detail in there. So I've got some viridian, a little bit of light red again. It's mixed up, very earthy green. Can lay that in while it's all still wet. Let's grab a piece of paper towel as well and very quickly blot out some of the paint across the surface of the water. I want a little bit of a glow there behind those trees. Now let's pick up a smaller brush. It's a sable hair brush, and I've got some ultramarine, a little bit of light red. I can touch that in across that distant bank, and because it's such a thin layer of ink, it enables you to paint over the top of it if you wish. So I can bring in a suggestion of some distance with a little bit of blue or indigo colour, so some red and some blue. I can lay that all the way across. And use the paper towel to knock it back a touch. And because that ink's waterproof, the paint lifts straight off it. Let's get a bit more light red, a bit more viridian. Let's get some quite dark areas down in this foreground now. So building up quite a strong sense of light and shadow. Very moody feel to this painting. Let's get some more red, a little bit more raw sienna. I can darken some of the areas in this water. Really push the eye in to the middle there, where I've left that little bit of light. Very lightly drag across. I'm going to lift a couple of areas out as well. And so this is about experimenting, seeing what happens on the paper and working with it. Can give it all a very quick mist as well with the mist bottle. Let's lay in a slightly darker area across the sky as well, a little bit more texture in there. I'm going to lift out a couple more little areas across that surface of the water. Try and create a nice bit of glow. Let's get some more of that blue-grey in the palette. I can touch a bit of red into it. Can darken some areas in these trees. Very lightly dragging the brush on, using the side of the brush to create little bits of texture. Don't need to do too much. I did most of this with that first initial ink wash, so it's really about just creating the finished painting, looking where it needs maybe a tiny little bit of dark to pull it all together. Some more blue, some more red. Quite dark now. Let's get some texture across the foreground. Placing a dark next to the light in that water as well helps that to stand out a tiny bit more. Closing off as well on the left hand side there. Really want to try and push the eye more into the middle. It can be really quite bold with the dark down here in the foreground as well. And a little bit more dark around the bottom of that tree canopy. I think I can darken this trunk a tiny bit as well. And a little spray again with the mist bottle. Not too much, very light spray. Let's swap to a really small calligraphy brush. And start tying all these shapes together. Bring that dark all the way up into the tree. Soften some of those edges with paper towel as well. Still want to maintain that misty feel. But just pulling everything together now. A few final little dark edges. Be careful I don't lay these on too dark and too hard, so allowing it to break up in places, little broken edges. So another very light spray with a mist bottle helps keep everything very soft. Let's get some more blue, more light red. Let's get a little bit of viridian in there, a bit of raw sienna, very dark green. A few more very, very strong, bold, dark marks across the foreground. Really bring this foreground close, push the distance back. Also helps to make the light across the water stand out that little bit more. So really very kind of moody, ethereal looking painting. Okay, that's the painting finished. So laying down that layer of ink initially with quite a lot of water on the paper, so it allows it to blend and move around and create all those soft edges all kind of blurred together with some clouds in the sky and a distant tree line, making it up as I go along. Like I said, based on some paintings that I've been looking at in a book, History of American Tonalism. Worth checking out if you like this style of painting. Very classic style of painting, but really using a limited palette as well. Once the ink's dry, bring a wash over the whole thing and then pull it all together with some darks and little areas of colour just to make everything pop. But anyway, very experimental, very fun way of working. Do give it a go. Let me know how you get on. And I'll be back again, so I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everybody for watching. Cheers.